Hi guys, welcome to my channel Dilli Rouge, and today I'm reviewing the Oytra Oven Bake 10 Bright Colors Multi-Pack. This review is not paid and is based on a test sample shared by Oytra for testing purposes only. So this variety is meant for kids above 8 years and it calls itself a flexible variety. It is also available in 10 bright colors and 10 pastel color varieties as well. Today I'll be reviewing the 10 bright colors set, however. Each color is 10 grams each. This appears to have a very clean and sturdy blister packaging with a compartment for each color, and the colors also appear to be very vibrant and they look absolutely perfect for kid projects, and therefore the quantity also looks quite appropriate for the target audience that they are trying to reach. Please note all the variants in Oytra have very different bake times and temperatures, which is usually mentioned in all of their packaging. So please pay attention to that information when baking your pieces. I will be reviewing the baking temperament of this clay as well up ahead in this video. So this variety asks us to bake the clay at anywhere between 130 to 150 degrees centigrade or 270 to 300 degrees Fahrenheit, which I think is a very forgiving range of temperature. It will definitely make it easier for kids to just focus more on creating than on ensuring the baking time and temperature. So it needs a minimum bake time of 40 minutes in the oven, which we will definitely test up ahead. The packaging has instructions on the back side, which looks very extensive. It mentions that it is a semi-hard variant. It also advises us to bake a test piece before using it in projects. Now, I feel that this should be a consistent practice across all variants or even brands for that matter. It's the best way to avoid any errors when you create your final projects. But so far the packaging looks very promising on this one. I'll try to open the packaging and show you how well and secure it has packaged. Okay, so on the inside it seems to have another blister securing the colors. This is absolutely fantastic in my opinion. From a storage point of view, definitely it's 10 stars. Each color having its own compartment and a very nice, snug and secure covering for the entire box. I love this packaging because I could probably even use it to store other things in the future after I'm done using the clay. The clay seems to have a good consistency, but it's not leaving any color in my fingers, which is, I don't know if it's good or bad, because it appears to have a good pigment ratio, at least to the naked eye. But since it's not leaving any color in my hands, I will have to check for the translucency of this particular clay as well, if the pigment ratio is good enough post baking. So once you've taken the desired amount of clay, also you can just keep the rest back inside these compartments and just close it and store the box away, you know, for later use. I'm actually extremely impressed by the packaging on this one. Do keep the instruction manual handy and not throw it away, since the variants all have different baking instructions. It just helps to keep them handy, or probably note it down in a diary as a ready reckoner, because you will be needing the different baking instructions for each variant. So to check the consistency, now I'll try some colors, starting with the light green. This one seems to be not very soft, not very hard either. It's not leaving a lot of color or pigment in my fingers or on the surface. Let's see how it responds to the acrylic roller. It definitely needs to be conditioned thoroughly because see, if you look closely, you can notice some white grains in the clay. Not sure if that's a pigment problem though. You can probably like fix this uneven distribution of pigment by conditioning it thoroughly. I'm assuming I can fix that with conditioning. However, I'm very tempted to try making canes with this variant. I mean, it shows very good consistency for canes, and I might just make a video trying that with this box. I'll probably keep you posted when I do that. In all honesty, I actually like the consistency of this clay. I mean, it's not very sticky, it's completely manageable level of softness. There is no need for leaching this variant, and I think it's perfect for kids because they don't have to worry about too much and just work with it with bare hands. I'm not using a pasta machine also right now, so I think it's very manageable. So we'll just check how the dark green is. I think it's slightly more softer than the light green as expected, but it's still not very soft and easier to work with. Similarly, if you see, it's giving white patches. This will again have to be conditioned no matter what, but it's slightly softer than the light green one. It doesn't leave color though. I don't see any color being left on my hands, so that's a plus despite having a higher pigment ratio. But this definitely needs to be conditioned as well. So I believe all the colors will need conditioning, as the packaging already says. But I like the consistency of this pack. It's pretty easy, it looks easy to navigate. I think I can even try canes with this package, so that's a plus. Let's go to something like red. Reds also tend to be slightly more softer in texture. Just check the red. Great consistency actually. I think this is perfect for even adult professionals, the consistency that this particular pack has. It's not very soft, easy to work with. Ideally, when you work with polymer clay, give it some body heat, give it some time in your hands so that it understands, it gives you a good idea of how it will be if you start working with this particular clay. It does leave a little color. I can see the red is leaving a little bit of color, but that's not a deal breaker definitely. I do want to highlight that if the clay leaves color or pigment in your hands or on surfaces, it's not really a bad thing. You know, in fact, if it does not leave color, you might have to worry because it might have an issue with the opacity, which means that it could be slightly translucent after baking, which could affect the color once it bakes. So we will test for that when we do the baking test. Right now, I see absolutely no issue with this particular clay. Now let's check how difficult it is to condition this clay. I'll try to condition the blue color for this particular section. To condition, I usually let the clay get a little warmth from my hands by kneading it. I knead it like this. This also puts a little less stress on my pasta machine rollers, because I've already made the clay malleable with the warmth of my hands, and you can get a good judgment of the clay consistency this way. When we condition clay, be it any brand or any variant, always keep a close eye for air bubbles. This usually happens when you trap air between the folds when you pass it through the pasta machine or use an acrylic roller, or just plain simply knead it with your hands. I usually get rid of air bubbles using my blade. So I just slit it with a blade to let the air escape and press it out. So keep a close eye on air bubbles and keep getting rid of them as and when you see them when you're conditioning your clay. Slightly stretching it out with your hands like this will also help in reducing them quite a bit. So try stretching it out slightly from all ends and flatten it out using a pasta machine. Notice, I think this clay could also result in plucking because I can see a few discolored fragments showing through the clay a bit. So I'm not sure how that's gonna show. I think this will show more prominently once it's baked. See? Yes, bubbles is an issue, and it has I feel these patches, these small fragments that are showing in between is probably because the pigment has not been uniformly distributed in this clay. The clay does not break as such before conditioning, but I think you will need to condition it to uniformly spread out the particles in this clay. Yes, bubbles are an issue in this variant. Okay, so before I talk about how this variant performed in the oven, I'd like to talk about baking polymer clay just in general, because there are two things to keep in mind while baking. One is temperature and second is the surface on which you'll be baking. For temperature, investing in an oven thermometer is like the wisest decision when baking polymer clay, because most ovens, new or old, it doesn't matter how new it is, most of them are off on their temperature settings, which is like the most crucial factor for the chemical reaction to take place. The chemical reaction ensures that your clay cures properly. So the thermometer will actually help you set the exact temperature as per the brand guidelines. Each brand has its own temperature requirements, and this can prevent burning or probably even underbaking of your pieces, which is one of the most common problems people complain about when they're baking polymer clay. And the second part of baking is to find a good surface to bake on. What I use is a glass slab that I got custom cut from a glass shop nearby. So you can also use a ceramic tile or even a steel plate. Just remember that if you bake clay directly on the slab or whatever surface you're using, you are bound to get shiny spots on the clay that faces down. So for avoiding this, you can put a sheet of plain printer paper to get smooth surfaces on your clay. Otherwise, you can get really ugly shiny spots and bubbles on the surface that touches the baking surface you put the clay on. So I baked the flexible clay with 3 variations: the prescribed temperature, -5 degrees, +5 degrees, and a variation of 20, 30 and 1 hour. 20 minutes, 30 minutes and 1 hour. The prescribed temperature for this, the range is between 130 to 150 degrees centigrade. And the prescribed time of baking is 40 minutes. So let's see how this one performed under the different variants. I will actually show you the variation in the clay from the original version of this clay. I don't think there's been much of a variation. This was the original piece of clay. There's been hardly any shift in color. Actually, in fact, there's no shift in color. There are no bubbles. I've not faced any bubbles in this version. I haven't reached this particular version of clay. There has been no bubbles and no color shift. If I underbaked it also, obviously there will be no color shift. But if I overbaked it, say by 5 degrees centigrade, there's still no color shift in this. Now, if we look at the surface of these pieces, as compared to the conditioning section, if you remember, there's hardly any bubbles on the surface of these pieces. I mean, the little bumps that you're seeing, that's probably because I conditioned this color slightly carelessly. But I hardly saw a lot of bubbling on the surface despite that. It does have a very faint translucency if you look carefully, which means it's got a slightly glassy and shiny look. It's not exactly opaque, but it has not affected the color in any way, which is a very good thing. Now let's check the strength of these pieces at the recommended temperatures and above and below it. It's still pretty strong. It's not breaking. It's resisting breakage. So I think that is a good sign. And you can see the stress lines. I was expecting this to break, but it's not breaking, which is a good sign. Because I, in a way, underbaked it, but it's still got a little stress line from the pressure that I've put, and still did not break. If I check the underbaked one, I'm assuming this might break. Even this has a stress line. It's not breaking. It has actually cured even with just 20 minutes in the oven and 5 degrees lesser temperature. So I think for kids this is a perfect variant because it's quite forgiving with baking temperature as well and the baking time. Let's check for the strength of this one, if this gives any stress lines. Yes, it does give a stress line, but it's still pretty strong. It gives a stress line even with a higher temperature and 1 hour in the oven. So that is a verdict on the flexible clay for kids, the 10 bright color pack, that this one. This is the pack that I tested, and that's how it stood with the strength of the clay. So let's revisit the pros of this variant. To sum it up, I'm very satisfied with this variant. It shows no color change even with the variation in the temperature, and has a light translucency which I feel could be great for miniatures. It's easy to remove bubbles from this clay as well, which makes it very easy to condition. The best part about this clay is its packaging, absolutely brilliant for storing clay or other craft supplies. Also great strength, very forgiving with its bake time and temperature. It's a great clay for kids and beginners. I would personally love to try this one with canes as well. Okay, now coming to the cons, which I don't feel is a lot. I feel its translucency could also become a challenge depending on the project that you take up. The quantities might also appear less for professionals, because this pack is mostly meant for beginners. Also, the clay could show signs of plaquing in some colors, so keep an eye out for that. For more videos like this, you can subscribe to my channel Dilli Rouge Art, or hit the bell icon down below for notifications on my next videos. Bye for now, enjoy claying.